My husband had been unreachable for almost 3 days. He said,
"I won't reply for a while."
but my concerns were growing. I thought I should contact the police soon. Just as I was thinking that, I got a call from one of my subordinates. "Ma'am, your husband passed away in an accident." Huh? Why did she call me? I couldn't think about that right now. I hurried to the hospital. There, I saw my husband's unrecognizable body. My name is Harper, 28 years old. I got married 2 years ago and live with my husband while working at an IT company. We want to have children someday, but not yet. My husband's name is Christopher, 2 years older than me. He is very dedicated to his job. Just the other day, there was talk of him getting a promotion. That day, as soon as he got home from work, he happily rushed up to me.
"Harper, listen, I might get a position soon."
"Really? That's amazing."
"Yeah, I'm so happy. It's been tough, but I'm glad I worked hard."
"Christopher, you've been working so much on your days off. I'm really happy for you. Congratulations." Yes, my husband was so dedicated to his job that he gave up his days off to work. He often worked late and came home just before the date changed. I worried about his heavy workload at times, but finally, it paid off. Seeing my husband so happy made me feel happy too. I can't lose either, I thought. I'll try harder too. However, since that day, I started to notice something off about Christopher. His overtime increased even more, and he wouldn't come home until after midnight. His weekend work, which used to be only a few times a month, gradually increased. And last month, he went to work, even on Saturdays. Not only that, but I felt his attitude towards me had become somewhat cold. We used to go out on our days off, but that stopped recently. Isn't that strange? Why doesn't he seem at all tired, despite working so hard? Concerned, I decided to suddenly ask my husband about it. I waited for him to come home late from work and brought up the conversation. "Hey, Christopher, can I talk to you for a minute?"
"What? I'm tired and want to sleep."
"Lately, you're always on your phone before bed. Even though you come home late, aren't you getting sleep deprived?"
"What are you trying to say? How I spend my free time is my business, right?"
"That might be true, but are you really that busy with work?" At my question, his expression stiffened for a moment. Not missing that, I pressed him further. "I understand you have a lot to do since you got promoted, but isn't it too hard? You have too many weekend work days. And isn't it bad for the company to overwork employees?"
"I have no choice. I'm not doing overtime and weekend work because I want to."
"But isn't it too much?"
"You don't understand my job, Harper, do you? Don't butt in when I'm tired from work."
With that, Christopher left the living room. After that, my uneasy feelings didn't go away. Then one day, I usually commuted by car, but on my way home from work, I got into an accident. I was rear-ended by another car and taken to the hospital by ambulance. I had bruises all over my body. After several tests to be safe, I was told to stay in the hospital for a few days. To have a change of clothes brought to me, I called my husband. However, no matter how many times I called, he didn't answer, and he didn't reply to the messages I sent. He should be done with work by now, so why? Until now, we could at least exchange messages during his overtime. I kept calling him every few minutes, and it finally connected an hour later. As I tried to explain the situation, he let out a big sigh.
Ugh, you're so persistent. Can't you tell I'm working overtime if I don't answer the phone?
"I'm sorry, but that's not the issue right now."
"Huh? What do you mean?"
"Actually, I got into an accident on my way home, and I'm in the hospital now. My whole body hurts, but they said there's no life-threatening injuries."
"An accident? Ugh, what a pain you're causing."
I involuntarily let out a, "Huh?" at his unexpected response. He continued mercilessly, as I was at a loss for words.
"Stop getting into accidents when I'm busy. I'm not paying for the car repairs, all right?"
"I understand, but I need you to bring me a change of clothes."
"What? Why do I have to do that? I'm tired from work. And it's like a punishment game to go to the hospital for someone who got into an accident due to carelessness.
Carelessness? Why are you talking like that? Besides, it wasn't my fault. It was the other drivers.
Stop nagging. Anyway, I'm not going, and I won't reply for a while. Figure it out yourself.
The call ended there. The busy tone echoed in my ear, pushing my heart to the limit. Before I knew it, I was in tears. Why did he speak like that? Aren't you worried about your wife who had an accident? He used to prioritize me over work. If I could, I'd want to get a change of clothes myself. My parents live far away, so I can't ask for their help. I sent several messages to my husband afterward, but he never brought my things. I had no choice but to buy everything I needed at the hospital store. Since then, I tried contacting my husband a few times, but 3 days had passed without a reply. He said he wouldn't reply for a while, but I was getting worried. No matter what, it's unusual not to have any contact for this long. What if he got into an accident too? That anxiety crossed my mind. That's when I heard a knock on the hospital room door. When I responded with yes, my coworker Jasmine, who I usually get along with, came to visit me. Jasmine, you came. Thank you.
I was surprised when I heard you had been in an accident after I contacted you since you hadn't been at work for a while.
It's not a big deal. Just some bruises and a broken bone.
It's more than enough. But I'm glad. You seem to be doing well.
For a while, we chatted and laughed about trivial things. As visiting hours were ending, Jasmine started to get ready to leave. But then, she stopped and looked troubled. I cautiously asked her, Jasmine, what's wrong?
I'm sorry, Harper. I don't think I should say this now, but I saw it.
Saw? What did you see?
I saw your husband walking with Daisy.
What? When did that happen?
3 days ago.
The Daisy Jasmine mentioned was a junior coworker at our company. I had been her mentor when she was a new employee. Even now, a few years later, we'd go to lunch together once a week. Why would she be with Christopher? Daisy and my husband should have last met at our wedding. Could it be? But there's no way they would do something like that. Despite thinking it was impossible, the worst-case scenario crossed my mind. According to Jasmine, she saw my husband with a suitcase and Daisy 3 days ago. Since then, Daisy has been on paid leave. I hesitantly called my husband's office, and my suspicion was confirmed. He had also applied for paid leave 3 days ago. At that moment, my suspicion turned to certainty. My beloved husband and the junior I cared for, being betrayed by both of them at the same time. Probably my husband's increased overtime and working on weekends were because he was meeting her. No, maybe they were already involved before that. As I recalled my husband's suspicious behavior, more and more things started to make sense. So that's why he became so cold. Surprisingly, it all made sense to me. Unconsciously, I called my husband. I hardly contacted him these past few days, thinking he wouldn't respond anyway. He probably wouldn't pick up after just a few attempts. But I couldn't just let him do as he pleased. I kept ringing his phone until he answered. 30 minutes after I started calling, my husband finally answered, sounding annoyed.
What's your problem? I told you I wouldn't answer for a while.
Why? Are you so busy that you can't even answer a call from your wife?
Of course, I'm working every day.
Even though you're on paid leave until tomorrow, what kind of work are you doing? Assuming he hadn't been caught yet, my husband hesitated for a moment. Still thinking he could deceive me, he quickly started making excuses.
What are you talking about? I didn't take any paid leave.
No use playing dumb. I already confirmed with the company.
No, well, actually, I just suddenly wanted to take it easy. I've been relaxing at home these past few days.
Oh, really? With Daisy? Even preparing a suitcase? I already know everything. Just confess. I couldn't help but raise my voice. Then, my husband realizing he couldn't hide it any longer, revealed his true colors.
Ah, so you found out. Yes, I'm on a trip with Daisy. Now that you know, stop bothering me, you ugly woman.
So, that's how it is. Why? Why with Daisy?
Why do you think? She's younger and cuter than you.
For such a reason.
Enough already. I'm having fun on this trip. Don't bother me. Don't worry. I'll divorce you when I get back.
He said,
See ya.
and hung up the phone. It was right after that. The love that I had for my husband turned into hatred. In an instant. I can't forgive him. To be betrayed in such a terrible way? I won't let them have their way. I'll definitely send them to hell. That's when I decided to take revenge on them. But before I could take matters into my own hands, divine punishment would come to them. The next day I was discharged from the hospital and started to regain some mobility. To prepare for my revenge, I opened my smartphone to search for a lawyer's office. Just then my phone rang. Daisy's name appeared on the screen. My husband's affair partner? Surprised for a moment, but I couldn't run away now. I gathered my courage and answered the call. Hello? Harper? Ma'am? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Isn't it common sense to apologize in person? Yes, you're right. But that's not the point right now. Huh? Daisy's voice was somewhat shaky. Then she said something that made me doubt my ears. Your husband has died in an accident. What? I was so shocked that I couldn't find the right words. Confused, I barely managed to respond to Daisy. He's dead? What are you talking about? Christopher is on a cheating trip with you, isn't he? Yes, that's true. But on the way home, Christopher got caught in an accident. According to Daisy's story, it seems the two of them were in an accident on their way home from the airport. Christopher was hit by a car, and although an ambulance was called right away, he didn't move a muscle. To my surprise, the hospital Christopher was taken to was the same one I was staying at. I quickly hung up the phone, explained the situation to the nurse, and headed to my husband's side. I had to move using crutches as my broken bone hadn't fully healed. Since I heard he had died, I assumed I'd be taken to a morgue or something, but incredibly, Christopher was still alive. However, he was seriously injured. Just after I arrived, a breathless Daisy rushed in. Seeing Christopher lying in the bed, she collapsed on the spot when she realized he was still alive. I had a lot to say, but unfortunately Christopher was in critical condition. I told Daisy we'd talk later, and we each went home that day. Days later, Christopher barely pulled through, but the accident left him paralyzed from the waist down, forcing him into a wheelchair. My in-laws were furious when they found out about the affair trip. Although they must have felt something, seeing their challenged son, they scolded him clearly, saying,
You brought this on yourself by having an affair.
After my in-law left, I called Daisy and decided to have a talk with her and my husband. When I arrived at my husband's hospital room, they were having a loud argument.
If you hadn't pushed me that time, none of this would have happened. It's all your fault.
What? You're the one who wanted to take that route. Don't blame me.
What did you say? In the first place, this happened because you wanted to go on a trip. I paid for everything. Give me my money back. Pay for the treatment, you lousy woman. You hurt the man you love, so you should pay, right?
Don't be ridiculous. Who would get serious with a guy like you? This was just a fling. I'll never see you again.
What?
The two of them carried on their unbearable argument, apparently not realizing I was there. I couldn't take it anymore. I forcibly opened the door to the hospital room, took a deep breath, and shouted at them. Enough! It's because you had an affair in the first place that this happened. Take your blame game somewhere else.
Harper.
Ma'am. Finally realizing I was there, their faces quickly stiffened. Ignoring their confusion, I continued. How can you still argue in a situation like this? Do you even understand the situation you're in now? Christopher was the first to answer that question.
Harper, don't worry. I'm breaking up with this stupid woman.
So?
So I realized that it's always been you for me, Harper.
Huh, what are you saying now? We're getting divorced, right?
What?
I couldn't help but burst into laughter at my husband's dumbfounded expression. Didn't you say it? When I get home, we'll get a divorce, or what? Now that you've fought with your affair partner, you want to stay married to me. Are you an idiot? There's no way I'd spend my life with a piece of trash like you.
Harper, why? Didn't you love me?
Don't mess with me. Who betrayed that love first? It was you. After all that talk about getting a divorce, you want to get back together when it's convenient for you? I'm not as cheap as you think. If you understand that, never show up in front of me again. Keep regretting this for the rest of your life, you jerk. My husband was stunned by my yelling. Daisy was pale and trembling. Later, I was discharged from the hospital and decided to stay at my parents' house for a while. After that, my divorce from Christopher was finalized through a lawyer. I demanded alimony from him and Daisy, which they paid in full. Christopher was fired from his job due to this incident. It turned out he'd been using company money for their affair. Adding to his paralysis, he was easily dismissed. All that remained for him was a claim for damages from the company. Finding a new job with his condition would probably be difficult. It didn't take long for word of Daisy's affair with my husband to spread throughout the company. She was met with cold stares and eventually couldn't stand the atmosphere and began skipping work without permission. As a result, I heard she finally submitted her resignation. Now those two will probably never lead a decent life again. Even so, I don't feel sorry for them. This is a disaster they brought upon themselves. As for me, I rented an apartment near my workplace and started a new life. Many colleagues show concern or curiosity, but honestly, my feelings are mixed, and I can't describe how I feel. But such trivial rumors will probably die down soon. Now, I want to enjoy my life without being swayed by others.
It had been a while since Eddie, my father-in-law, moved into a retirement community. One night, Jimmy, my husband, spoke up, which was rare.
If we don't have to take care of Dad anymore, you're useless to me. I'm leaving.
Ah, so that's what this is about. You want a divorce? Jimmy nods silently. I had been putting up with Jimmy's terrible behavior ever since he blamed our infertility on me. I decided to accept the divorce.
I'll give you all the money we've saved together for your poor self.
With that, Jimmy left and moved back to his parents' home. After the divorce was finalized, I got a call from my ex-husband Jimmy.
You were planning to set me up, weren't you?
At this point, he had lost his home, savings, and job. My name is Nina Dowell. I'm almost 35. I married Jimmy, my childhood friend who is a year younger than me, 10 years ago. We're currently renting an apartment and living together. We grew up in the same neighborhood and played together since kindergarten. Jimmy's family was wealthy and they lived in a mansion. We used to play hide and seek there. The place was so big that when Jimmy couldn't hide anymore, he would run to me crying, "Nina, Nina." I fondly remember how adorable he was, following me around. When I was in first grade, Jimmy envied my new backpack. "Let me borrow your backpack." He would borrow it and wear it with a big smile on his small back. A year later, when he got his own backpack, he started showing it off to me. I thought that was cute too. Jimmy outgrew me in height when I was in 4th grade. By then, he had become a basketball player and was good at academics. I used to get presents and cards from him every Valentine's Day. Around that time, I started getting jealous of the girls around Jimmy. I didn't realize it then, but now I know it was love. My first love. Years passed, and when Jimmy and I were in high school, he suddenly confessed his feelings. We started dating. After graduating from college and working for about 2 years, we decided to get married. Looking back, I've known Jimmy for a long time. My mother-in-law had already passed away, and my father-in-law was living alone in a big house. I would visit Jimmy's family home a few times a week to keep Eddie company and help him with chores. I often helped with shopping in the evenings. Eddie had always treated me like a daughter since I was little. I was fond of him and called him Eddie as if he were another father to me. I never thought he would actually become like another father to me. We both worked and had a joint bank account to save money for when we had kids. That said, I was worried because we couldn't have children. I'm already 35, which is generally considered an age for high-risk pregnancy. You're getting older. Maybe it's time to give up on having kids? Lately, Jimmy has been blaming my age for our inability to have children, and he's become disinterested in trying. Despite being hurt by his words, I still wanted a child with the man I love. I wished he would at least accompany me to medical checkups and be as informed about it as I am.
Go to the hospital yourself. I'm busy with work.
When did my husband become like this? Is it since he started working and coming home tired every day? He's become cold towards me. Jimmy is a salesman, so maybe he's stressed from work. I try to make home a relaxing place for him, but it doesn't seem to resonate. As March was coming to an end and Easter was approaching, I asked Jimmy, "Where are we going for Easter this year?" He simply said,
I have to work,
and went to his room. Since Jimmy would be away for work, I decided to visit both my parents and Jimmy's parents. My parents and my brother lived together happily. Because my brother stays with them, I only visit a few times a year, but they always welcome me warmly. "I'm home." "Welcome back. Good to see you." I decided to confide in my mom about our struggles to conceive. She gently held my hand and told me, "Don't rush." Her words lightened my heart a bit. "Thanks, Mom." Time flew by as I relaxed at my parents' house. It was already evening, and I had to go home to prepare dinner. "I'm leaving now."
Come back anytime.
Home is always warm. I returned home feeling fulfilled and waited for Jimmy. He came home around 7 p.m., but he had already eaten dinner and went straight to his room. I ate a hamburger alone and put Jimmy's portion in the fridge. I was so happy during the day, but now I feel like crying. I wondered where I went wrong, but couldn't figure it out. Did I ever neglect Jimmy? Did I ever say something cold to him? Thinking negatively is a bad habit, so I decided to go to bed early. When I woke up the next morning, Jimmy had already left. I hadn't heard he would leave so early, so I couldn't see him off. The hamburger from last night was gone. He must have eaten it this morning. The empty plate was left in the kitchen. I've been telling myself that Jimmy is tired from work, but I work too, and I'm starting to feel like I can't take it anymore. Since it's my day off, I headed to Jimmy's parents' house in the morning.
Welcome.
Eddie greeted me warmly. "Are you about to have breakfast?" He hadn't eaten yet, so while Eddie prepared some bread and coffee, I made scrambled eggs and cooked bacon. I was worried that I might be intruding so early in the morning, but Eddie smiled and said,
"Thank you. It's delicious."
"It's been a while since someone complimented my cooking, and it feels really good." Jimmy used to enjoy my cooking, but he hasn't said anything like that in years. I'm glad you like it, Eddie. Since I could spend my day off at Eddie's, we chatted and watched TV until the evening. We even got excited talking about a TV show we both like.
You like that show too, Nina?
Eddie and I have quite similar tastes. I decided to prepare not just lunch and dinner, but also some meals for Eddie to keep.
Thank you so much for doing all this,
he said multiple times as he saw me off, warming my heart. On my way home, I saw something shocking. Jimmy was coming out of an arcade, dressed in a suit. Maybe he finished work early because of Easter and stopped by. That thought crossed my mind, but I couldn't shake off my unease. The next morning, I decided to follow him to see where he was going. I felt guilty for doubting Jimmy and thought about turning back several times, but he ended up going to the same arcade as yesterday. Jimmy is lying to me. The realization hurt. When he came home that night, I confronted him about what I'd seen. Were you really at work? Please be honest. I tried to ask as gently as possible, but Jimmy didn't apologize. Instead, he raised his voice.
We used to have some money to spend freely, but now we don't because we're saving for the future.
But that's for our future children.
At your age, you can't have kids anymore. I want to stop saving and enjoy the present.
His words left me stunned, a mix of surprise and sadness. I couldn't find the words to respond. The conversation ended there. Jimmy sighed and went to his room. It was clear he wasn't thinking about our future. A few weeks later, I got a call saying Eddie was injured. I rushed to the hospital, but Jimmy said he was too busy with work to come. Eddie's injury wasn't serious, but it led to the decision for him to move into a retirement community. Eddie himself suggested it.
I don't want to be a burden on you, Nina.
I told him it wasn't a burden, but I also realized I couldn't be there for him all the time because of my work. I helped Eddie with the paperwork and preparations for moving into the retirement community.
How is Jimmy doing lately?
He seems busy with work. That's all I could say. Eddie seemed to sense something, but didn't press further. Jimmy hadn't visited his parents' house for a while, and didn't help with any of the preparations. A few days later, the day came for Eddie to move into the retirement community. I accompanied Eddie to the retirement community early in the morning. It was already hot outside, and I was sweating after just a short walk. Jimmy was off work today, but he said,
"You going alone is enough,"
and left for somewhere else.
Nina, you've been a real help. Thank you.
I'll visit you again on my next day off. Eddie smiled warmly at me. One evening, after some time had passed since Eddie moved to the retirement community, Jimmy surprisingly initiated a conversation.
So, now that Dad's in the retirement community, you don't have to take care of him anymore, right?
I tilted my head, not understanding what Jimmy was getting at. Jimmy continued, serious-faced.
You're unnecessary. I'm leaving this house.
Ah, I see. So, you want a divorce? Jimmy nodded silently. Ever since he blamed me for not being able to have children, my feelings for him had cooled. I easily accepted the divorce. We started discussing property division, including our shared bank account. I'm not good at these kinds of conversations, but they're unavoidable. That's when Jimmy said,
"I'll give you all the money we saved together."
Jimmy seemed to have strange confidence because his family is wealthy. As we proceeded with the divorce, Jimmy moved back to his parents' home. Goodbye.
Yeah.
It felt so anticlimactic, considering we'd spent so much time together since we were young. A few days after Jimmy moved back home, our divorce was finalized. Both of us were about to take new steps in life. Just then, I got a call from Jimmy.
What the hell is going on?
He said that movers had suddenly shown up at his parents' house and started taking furniture. He accused me of doing something. Actually, when Eddie was still at home, he had told me.
Jimmy never visits. Maybe we spoiled him because we had money.
Eddie looked sad. When Eddie moved to the retirement community, he said,
I won't use this furniture anymore, and if I give it to Jimmy, he'll just waste the money.
And had transferred everything to me. So the movers were arranged by me. I also told Jimmy that the house and land were already on the market and a buyer had been found.
You can't just do that.
Jimmy had apparently counted on the house, land, and furniture for the divorce and was yelling at me over the phone.
You hid this to trap me.
Since Jimmy wouldn't listen, I decided to let his father explain.
Jimmy, it's been a while since we've talked like this. What's going on, Dad?
Eddie calmly said,
It's all settled. There's nothing you can do. You've been the one not visiting or calling me for a long time. The discussion is over. Game over.
Jimmy seemed to be at a loss for words after hearing that. A few days later, I visited Eddie at the retirement community. I heard that Jimmy, who had lost his home, furniture, and savings, had moved into a rundown apartment. Apparently, he had also quit his job, counting on his family's money, and was struggling to find new work. Right now, he's barely making ends meet by doing manual labor as a day laborer at construction sites. No one could have seen this coming.
How's Nina doing these days?
I rented a place near my parents' house and am living quietly. I spend weekdays having dinner and weekends at my parents' house, unless I have other plans. My parents and brother are happy to see me so often. I'm also happy to help with household chores.
Nina, you're such a good kid.
Eddie smiled at me as he always does. Then he continued with a smile.
Jimmy came to see me 3 days ago. He asked how I was doing here and if there was anything he could do for me.
Hearing this, I felt a bit relieved. Maybe Jimmy had finally come to his senses. Being in a tough situation made him realize how privileged his past self was and what he should truly value now. Can I come to visit you like this sometimes?
Of course, thank you as always.
Even after divorcing Jimmy, Eddie remains an important figure in my life, almost like a second father. I hope that someday I can have a good relationship with Jimmy again. With that thought, I head back to my parents' house. Welcome back. How is Eddie? He's good. He seems happy that Jimmy visited him. Oh, that's good to hear, my mom said. Nina, can you help with dinner? Of course. Let me put my stuff away first. I replied and quickly headed to my room. I want to protect what's important to me and continue living in this peaceful life.